is the only open portion of the meeting. Meeting notices and information on how members of the public can provide input or questions will be included in each agenda and posted on the village website prior to the meeting in accordance with notice requirements.
Could I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried unanimously. We'll now go on to the approval of the agenda. The recommendation would read
that the agenda be approved as circulated.
Want to move that? Seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried unanimously. Now we'll move on to public input. Public is permitted to provide comments to council on any item shown on the meeting agenda. A 2-minute time limit applies to speakers. Do we have
I will just note, Mayor McEwen, that we did have 2 submissions by residents ahead of tonight's meeting. And we will be addressing the questions that were posed and the comments made during the items on the agenda. But certainly we, like you said, would open it up to any further public input.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I don't see anybody raising their hands, so we will move on then. We'll move on to adoption of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 1st, 2020. The recommendation would read
that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 1st, 2020 be adopted as circulated.
Someone to move, seconded. We'll open up for discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor? Anybody opposed? It's carried unanimously. Any business arising from those minutes? Okay, we'll now move on to, we don't have a consent agenda. We're now moving on to 9 legislative reports, subdivision and development control bylaw. Memorandum dated November 4th, 2020 from Chris Boyd from ISL Engineering is presented at November 17th, 2020 regular council meeting and attached for reference. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So as you mentioned, we did have a memo that came forward during the last regular council meeting in relation to some changes to our what it was formerly known as the Works and Services bylaw. It has now been updated and is being referred to as the Subdivision and Development Control bylaw. And we do have our engineering consultant, Mr. Boyd, here with us tonight. And so I'll just ask him to join us. Thank you, Chris. And he'll be able to walk through the bylaw and answer any questions.
Okay. So my first thought process is I'll go section by section. I don't know if you want me to go through line by line. Hopefully not. We'll be here all night. I'll kind of keep it the header sections. And if anyone has any questions, please stop me as we go and I'll try to answer your questions as we go. Okay, on to the fun stuff. So I try to highlight a lot of the information on a previous memo from last council. So it's a pretty comprehensive revision of the bylaw. We intend to completely axe the old bylaw and supersede it with this new bylaw. So as I said, it's pretty comprehensive. Obviously, the first section, we've kind of defined a number of components within the bylaw and the definitions. These are quite important through the document. One of them I would really point towards, because it's very important to know about, is the definition of small subdivision. The reason I bring this up, there's been a number of questions regarding infill development and how these bylaws would affect infill development and the requirements. So I've defined what a small subdivision is, and that basically is a subdivision of 1 or 2 lots of a subdivision by fewer than 3 additional lots would be created if the parcel proposed to be subdivided was in itself created by a subdivision within the past 5 years. So the reason for this, it gives the flexibility of the village to say that within infill, we will not require sanitary sewer pipes to be installed for these small subdivisions, because it wouldn't make much sense installing these pipes on such a small way. So hence why I've defined what small subdivision is. And then there's another section to this saying the consolidation of existing lots. Obviously, if we're consolidating lots, we don't really need to do any real works and services within that lot. It's just legally forming a lot. So keep that in mind. A lot of this subdivision bylaw is going to be applied to infill, but the sanitary sewer would not be a requirement. Okay, administration. So this administration section just talks about the legal requirements of the subdivision and delegation and who has the authority. Land dedication, this is a topic that perhaps I'll answer one of the questions that was posed from the public earlier today. Julie, would you like me to read out the email in its entirety and then answer it?
Yeah, sure, that would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, I will start with, I'll start with Doug's email here. The question raises, I'm confused with the newly proposed works and services bylaw. I acknowledge that it changes the minimum road requirement in the old works and services bylaw from 15.25 meters to 20 meters. But what is not clear is on how that affects a subdivision which is adjacent to an existing road where the right of way is currently less than 20 meters. A clarification would be appreciated. So my answer to that is that he's correct, and the majority of the road allowances will now be required to be 20 meters. However, in section 5.3 road cross sections, there's a reference to a limited local road, which may allow road right-of-ways to be up to 15.25 to 20 meters. The reason the 15.25 has been carried over, in very limited circumstances, there may be small cul-de-sacs which won't require a 20-meter road right away. And so therefore, I've kind of made the allowance in a very small section. We may be able to just stick with 15.25. That helps the proponent get to the subdivision which they require. In majority of cases, we will be requiring 20-meter road right-of-ways, make it consistent. The next section is, I think this answers the question already. The Weinberg subdivision was required to dedicate a 20-meter road right-of-way, as was the subdivision. It seems that the subdivision of Councillor Trowbridge was not. My current read of the new bylaw is that a road dedication of 20 meters will now be required. Am I reading this correctly? My answer is yes, a 20-meter road right-of-way will be required. However, there's a bit of confusion over a dedication and road right-of-way. Ultimately, the village wants to have the authority to use that piece of land, which is either, most of the time, is through a dedication, but a right-of-way can be used as well. It gives the municipality the right to put a pipe in that piece of roadway as well. So as long as the municipality has the authority to place something within that piece of road right away, it's an agreeable way of either doing road right away or a dedication of land. Either way works for the municipality. So I think that answers that question. So my understanding was that the changes were to bring clarity to Anmore's requirements. So based on this proposed in chronological order and under the OCP and Anmore bylaws, Bellaterra did not require road dedication of 20-meter widths. Weinberg did, I did, Trowbridge did not. I disagree, Trowbridge was required. And now all the others will be required to dedicate 20-meter road widths if their subdivision is adjacent to existing roads. Is this correct? Yes, it's correct that everyone will be more or less required to dedicate 20-meter road right-of-ways going forward. So I hope that clarifies it. It's more or less 20-meter road right-of-ways in most instances, except for some very special circumstances in regards to a small, short cul-de-sac.
Chris, I think Mayor McEwen has a question there for you.
Okay.
Chris, I think the clarity point that needs to be emphasized is this thing is that while the village doesn't want to limit the developable potential of property owners that have multiple acres next to these road right-of-ways, all we're specifically asking for is the ability to put a sort of a right-of-way under those roads and not completely own that road, taking away their subdivision potential down the road.
Yeah, that's right. So I can add a bit of clarity to that. It became apparent through new subdivisions that came forward that if we took the land as land dedication, it could drastically alter the effects of people being able to subdivide their land, as in they couldn't meet the zoning requirement of 2 parcels or RS1 zoning. So we didn't want to hamper the development requirements of those people. So hence why we've changed the language from road dedication to road right-of-ways, because they can then include that land within their subdivision, and the village gets what we ultimately really need is the requirement to put something on that piece of land if ever.
Perfect. Good. Thank you.
Kim?
Yeah, it goes beyond. It also affects the future of the infill properties because by definition, they're a single acre. And if they have a dedication, they wouldn't be a single acre and there would be no eligible infill lots, and that would be punitive to those individuals, and we didn't want that to happen.
Exactly why that's now changed. Okay, let me get to Linda's email. Oh, sorry, technical difficulties. All right. Okay. I think a lot of these questions in Linda's email here has been answered by my last spiel. Okay, Linda's questions were, does this bylaw only affect the infill parcels? The answer is no, this will affect all subdivisions in the future. Can anyone apply to subdivide under this bylaw? Well, yes, provided they meet all the other applicable bylaws as well. So e.g. like zoning or building bylaw as well. Will all subdivisions require a 20-meter road dedication, or will the right-of-way option be given to council? Trowbridge be more generally available? Yeah, I think I just answered that. That I would say in most circumstances, small subdivisions would be a road dedication, would be a road right-of-way, not a dedication. In what I would call the normal kind of stereotypical subdivision where a brand new road was being created, it would be required as a land dedication. So it would become ownership of the village in its entirety. So I think that's kind of the clarification there. Will each individual subdivision be required to install a sanitary sewer? As I just mentioned, no, not if it's classified as a small subdivision. There is also language within the bylaw that it's maybe some very rare circumstances, there might be a subdivision which is RS1 zoning and it's 6 lots, maybe for, you know, consideration for council and the administrator, it might not make sense to install the sanitary sewer. So it allows the administrator to waive that requirement in certain circumstances. But majority of time, there will be a requirement to install sanitary sewers in the future. Okay, and that's all the questions. Hopefully that's clarified those. Okay, so we made something that's going to become more prominent as development perhaps goes forward within the village. On the hillside is requirements for emergency access. As we know, it's challenging to create roads going up the hills. However, being cognizant of emergency egress from a subdivision, in emergency situations, you know, as long as you can get down the roadway, it's kind of an acceptable way of egress. And so we made provisions to make sure that you can have an emergency access created, which will provide that emergency if ever required to get out of your subdivision. Hence, so if it went forward, say on Pinnacle Ridge, in reality, there will be one roadway going up, but we want to make sure there's a secondary access to be able to get them down in one way or another. Another important one is the park dedication. This is just to carry forward because obviously subdivision doesn't require rezoning. So we've got a provision in here to take land as part of a subdivision to make sure we have vision to be able to create parkland through subdivision. And that would be the equivalent of 5% of the parcel. And it's very much carried forward from the last one, more or less, our last works and services. Section 5 is just works and services required, and that kind of goes through our roads, our sidewalks, street lighting. Again, a memo addressed to street lighting proponent. I'm not proposing that every single subdivision requires street lighting. There is provision in here to waive that requirement. I think really in reality, it's only on very, you know, in my opinion, it would be something like if IOCO ever went forward in the future, maybe that's where street lighting would occur within the municipality. Everywhere else, we could waive the rights to have street lighting. The requirements for a water distribution system, that makes sense. We've talked a lot about the sanitary sewer requirements, storm drainage collection, you know, that makes sense. We will have to get rid of the rainwater. We talk about statutory right-of-ways and exemptions to servicing requirements. So there are some limited factors where you wouldn't be required to put servicing in. They're kind of listed. Really, it's a highway dedication and parkland. Okay. There is also provision for, if I can't really see it within the village, but sometimes it doesn't make sense to build something straight away within a subdivision. And there's a requirement or a leeway here to allow us to take money for that as a credit and build it later on in the subdivision process. So it covers us off if there's ever a reason for not building it now, but building it later. I think one of the only things I can think of within the village this has happened in the past is doing the top lift of asphalt on subdivisions where we've taken credits in the past instead. Okay, Schedule A. This is a lot of general information here. This kind of outlines that the document, the Master Municipal Construction document, will be an overarching document within the subdivision. Talked about this at the last council meeting, that obviously this is an industry standard that we'd like to carry forward, and it doesn't mean we have to update our works and services every time there is an update to industry standards to MMCD. So it takes a lot of the onus off of staff to continually update these bylaws, because it's done through an industry practice. Okay, and then we kind of talk about design criteria. Obviously, we know why we have design criteria. We're trying to make sure we inherit good infrastructure going forward, hence why we've set standards. I'll kind of skip through a few of these bits and pieces. We just kind of listed off for transparency the requirements of what drawings we would require through a subdivision, to try and make sure that proponents, when they come forward, they know what they're signing up for through a subdivision, you know, the type of drawings which will be submitted. Okay, sorry. We talk about construction cost estimate calculations. This would be a requirement to make sure that we are bonding someone correctly for a subdivision. This would be, the onus would be put onto the developer's engineer, and it would then be checked by staff to make sure we believe it's a reasonable expectation of cost, to make sure we're taking the right amount of bondage. It's just this requirement for service records and record drawings. Again, it highlights the importance to make sure in the future that we receive the right documentation at the end of a subdivision, because in the past we sometimes haven't received the right information to help us from an operations and maintenance perspective. So there's a highlighted section saying these will be required in the future before you actually get your subdivision signed off officially and bondage and everything else given back to you. There's a lot of detailed requirements. Do you want me to walk you through all the detailed requirements of each section, or is there any particular questions anyone has on this?
I think we should open. I think you've done a great job, Chris, in regards to going through it. Let's just you've got a recommendation, so let's get the recommendation on the table, and then we'll see if there's any questions from council.
I can read the recommendation for you. The
Sure.
recommendation is that council grant first, second, and third reading to Anmore Subdivision and Development Control Bylaw number 633-2020.
Can I get someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Now I'll open up for discussion. Council, Councillor Trowbridge.
Chris, I think if I understood, the installation of sanitary sewer is that the concept of when the ground gets opened up, we lay pipe for future use?
Yes, that's correct. Yep.
So you said that the smaller subdivisions, we probably wouldn't require that?
Yeah, so it's written within the first section of so Schedule B, Section 3, sanitary sewers. I can kind of read it out for you. It basically says that if you're classified as a small subdivision, you will not be required to install a sanitary sewer.
Is there any opportunity, you know, I'll put it out there for discussion, but I think even a small subdivision should be required. You know, you have to, from my own experience, we have to bring services in from the street anyway. We're excavating anyway. And even though I'm a small subdivision, it wouldn't bother me to spend that money and time and lay that piece of infrastructure in. I think it should have, I mean, I'll probably do it anyway, but I kind of feel it should apply to small. I defer to anyone else's opinion, or if you have a reason it shouldn't.
I'll just step in. You know, I think the problem with a small subdivision, as Chris has outlined, that infrastructure will be on private property. So it won't be our responsibility where, you know, if a Pinnacle Ridge or one of these bigger proposals, we're going to be inheriting that infrastructure, those road systems, and that's when I think it makes sense. You know, individuals doing it, they could do that at any time. And I think it'll be, if, and I'll say this, a very large if sewer were ever to come in, it would be up to the owner's responsibility to bring it out to the lot line where the infrastructure, where village infrastructure exists and that. So I don't know if what we do nowadays would even meet what standards we want to have down the road from individual property owners.
Yeah, that's logical. That's logical. If you want to hook up, you're going to have to put your section in anyway.
Yeah, and I know when I lived over on the North Shore, that's what was happening is people joined on to it and that. But I think what Chris is really determining is any significant subdivisions where we're going to be inheriting significant infrastructure, like Crystal Creek, for example, would have been a perfect example of us putting the infrastructure in underneath the road so it's there.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing, and Chris has mentioned in his report, is something that I didn't realize, not being an engineer, but he said that the moment that you put it in, it doesn't start aging until it actually starts getting utilized. So if you cap it, it actually can just sit there for 30 or 40 years, and then its lifespan actually starts once it's actually being used.
Yeah. Okay. Second to that, I can already see by the questions that there's confusion about the road dedication versus right of way. I wonder if we should be, publishing sort of a note because we've got. Now, this is from memory, don't quote me here, but there's about 35 eligible properties for infill. I would hate those folks to be fearful that somehow this is going to limit their ability to continue to be qualified, number one. And number two, the explanation about a Crystal Creek type development or Ravenswood type development or Bellaterra type development where you're taking a large parcel and dividing it into a CD zone. Yeah, that makes sense that we dedicate the road because you're putting a road where there wasn't one. But when you have infill folks and they're sitting adjacent to existing roadways, I just don't want to create terror for these people. They've fought long and hard and tried to get the opportunity to do this. I don't want to scare the pants off them,
Mhm.
I think
Yeah,
it's
so I think that could be addressed. Maybe you're right. There needs to be a footnote on this somewhere that you're right. Maybe I can do a better job of explaining that with regard to the small subdivision and saying, overarchingly, you're right. Like, I don't want these subdivision bylaws to take away people's opportunities. If anything, I want to try and increase the opportunities and provide some flexibility wherever possible. Hence, with this small subdivision, and even writing in, things like, the administrator can sometimes waive these if there is a reason for it. I want to make sure that there's some of that flexibility within them.
Yeah, that's the point I'm getting at. It's good work, Chris. I'm not criticizing the job. I'm just
I can take criticism.
not all of us will be poring over that. And I can think of the folks like Fiona and various people that have made it to every one of those meetings to make sure that everything's still safe and moving forward for the infill. If it's in plain language, it just might avoid some issues.
Mhm.
good. Kim, are you done or are you finished? Okay, Councillor Weberink.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Some of my questions you already answered, Chris, regarding like the street lighting. Obviously, we would decide on a subdivision by subdivision basis if we even want street lights, which we don't. There's still a community that doesn't want street lighting, doesn't support it. A question about the sewer infrastructure. I totally support future-proofing our subdivisions, especially, I know that plastic pipe, if it's not exposed to light, it lasts forever. It's not being used. That just makes sense. But there's other parts of sewer infrastructure like lift stations with programmable logic controllers and VSDs. I would imagine we wouldn't be putting that kind of stuff in. That would we would maybe take money in lieu of that.
Well, the answer is, I would say the village, if the village ever wanted to have a comprehensive sanitary sewer network, you would likely require a few lift stations because we do have, a few lumps and bumps on our roadways, right? And so it kind of becomes this exercise of, do we need a lift station to get over a couple of the hills? Or can we find other ways of getting the sanitary sewer down the hill, basically? So
no, I totally agree with that logic, but to put in a pump and controls and all that and let that sit for 40 years,
no,
that makes no sense. Put in the piping, put in the place for all that stuff, but don't buy that equipment. Take that cash put it in a separate infrastructure account and buy that stuff in 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, so that would go down under the place that I talked about earlier in the forwards of if it doesn't make sense building it now, we would take money later, and we would take money now and build it later. So that's where I would use that section of the bylaw to say this makes 0 sense to use all this electronic equipment, which you're right will corrode over the next 30 years. We would just bank this money in a deposit and just wait until it became relevant.
Okay, perfect. And can you define? I noticed there was some language in there that refers to a low pressure sewer stormwater system.
Yeah, so that's engineering speak. That's what we call a siphon.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and I never say never. Then maybe there is a good option to have a siphon in Anmore instead of a pump station. You know, you don't want. Well, again, I wanted to make sure there was flexibility within this bylaw as much as possible, right, to help people through this instead of just saying you shall do this when sometimes it doesn't make sense. A bit of option for everyone.
Do siphons collect sediment at the bottom of the siphon? Is that a service thing?
Yeah, it is some O&M on siphons. They do require a little bit more maintenance, but if they're designed correctly, you know, they work pretty well. Yeah.
So I assume our standards for drainage are still ditches rather than culverts, unless we decide otherwise. So we still have decision-making power on that. We'll look at proposals, but that's still our standard.
So I've kind of put in a typical cross section at the very end of this bylaw, and the reality is, if we want to pursue having sidewalks and multi-user pathways and what have you, the ditching becomes problematic. As you just saw along East Road and Sunnyside, we had to infill some of those ditches to allow us to put that infrastructure in. So right now, this bylaw is showing that no, it isn't ditches; it's actually a pipe instead at this point in time.
Okay, because I mean, I know the Environment Committee would still like to look at things like bioswales. I mean, I think ditches, there's different kinds of ditches. They're more modern ditches. They're swales. Things like that, I think, would be great for certain subdivisions.
Again, I think we've made provisions within this bylaw to allow for that inventive green infrastructure. Like this is just a typical section. I'm saying this is the only section. When a proponent comes in and shows that there's green infrastructure and meets the requirements of, a storm drainage plan, I think we have the right, we have the duty to accept green infrastructure because it's the right thing to do, and continue to do that kind of stuff. Yeah,
that's my point. Okay, there's also something on page 68. Bear with me. I made the reference, but I'm going to read it. On section, it says here, underground detention facilities such as concrete chamber are the preferred method of detention for a subdivision. And then just below that, wet detention ponds complete with permanent low-level pool are the preferred method for stormwater detention. That sort of contradicts itself.
Wait 1 second.
That's on page 68.
So I went to 68 on the, okay, I got it. Yep.
The agenda package.
Yep.
So if you look at point L,
yeah,
and then you look at point M, point II.
Oh, okay. So yeah, maybe you're right. That do a bit of more clarification. There's different types of detention ponds. There's dry and wet. And in reality, what it should really refer to is we prefer to have wet ponds instead of dry detention ponds. The reason being that if you're going to go through the effort of having a detention pond, you kind of want some of that ecological value of having a wet pond as well. So you're right. That perhaps should be tightened up.
Yeah, we should change that.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, curbs, are they now going to be concrete if we put in curbs in a subdivision? Is there any standard as to the material?
Yeah, I prefer to have concrete because, again, this goes back to having resilient infrastructure that if the village doesn't have to, if it's on the developer's side, that we want to make sure we inherit, an infrastructure that will last us the longest period of time. So yeah, in reality, it would be a concrete curb.
Okay. Okay, that's all I have.
Good. Thank you. I can't see Councillor Laidler nor Councillor Cryer. Do they have any questions?
Councillor Littler looks like he has a question, Mayor McEwen.
Okay,
Hi, can you hear me, John?
I can.
I guess this is a question, I don't know, maybe one of those stupid questions, but under water distribution on page 44, you've got a population densities described, like 3.5 people per unit on a single residence, 3.1 people per townhouse. I mean, how do you get the 0.1s in a townhouse? And
So it's engineering speak. You're right. It's like the 2.4 children. It's just a way, a mathematical method of determining how much water will be required. And so it's a statistical analysis that's kind of been put through the industry of this seems to be about the right number when we add population based on that that subdivision. So it'd be kind of like you draw a big box around the subdivision, and let's say it was 5 acres. You then work out the population density based using those numbers and what type of.
so the question I'm asking is, I guess, are you only going to allow the amount of water for 3.1 people in a townhouse?
So the answer is there can be 6 people in a townhouse, but the laws of average would say there might only be 2 in another one. And so you take from the 2 and give to the 6. And so it trying to average itself out. So you don't want to overestimate sometimes your infrastructure, because we start having operational issues if you have too big of infrastructure for the amount of people who might be there. However, this is a good point to talk about now of if we think we would have more people in a townhouse or more people in our houses, now is the time to discuss it and increase it. No, however, I would say from an engineering perspective, these are pretty standardized numbers which are used throughout, I would say, a lot of BC.
Are they flexible? That's the question, I guess. I mean, like you could end up with a 4-bedroom townhouse or a 2-bedroom townhouse.
So
you would have a lot of different people, more people in one than the other.
For sure, but the answer would be yes, we could be flexible. If there a case was made saying we'd have way more density within these areas, I would ask their engineer to say, okay, you describe to me why this isn't a reasonable number, and allow them to, increase the number. I wouldn't want to decrease the number. However, I would struggle, again, this is more statistical analysis of laws of averages have kind of come to this number. There might be reasons why this would change.
Maybe if I could, we're not going to go around and we don't have the ability to enforce how many people are living in a home. Like Mr. Boyd said, it's more about when developing the systems that are required to service the homes, what is the law of average?
Yeah.
I think I would just interject that going down with Councillor Laidler's comments, we are in a unique situation that we certainly don't have the average houses in some of our municipality. As I drive around on my weekly, I see some houses. There's a house just down the end of my street at Fern Drive that is, it's going to be upwards of 10,000 plus square feet. You throw in how many people are going to be living there. Will it need to be sprinklered even? There's significant, some of these houses will have a significant draw of water. And I just, we need to be cognizant of that. Luckily, we can control, how we know how much land is still available to be building on, but, there are, and I'm seeing it in kind of today's demographics, more families living within the single family residence. So, it does pose an interesting and a challenge, I would say, to the engineers with some of that statistical information that they've been relying on for many years.
So I would say in those instances, in the industry, what is actually being shown up, the water system isn't really designed on a per person basis. It's based on fire flow requirements. So to be perfectly frank, we'd always have lots of water available for anyone in those houses because fire flows are drastically higher than any domestic use. However, we found some instances where this can be a situation. I know within Surrey, they've had some of these issues in some of their subdivisions, especially where they've had secondary residences within the house, is that you're right. The resident numbers are actually going up. Instead of it being 4 people per unit, they're finding it might be 7. And what it's actually causing a problem with is the sanitary sewer. The sanitary sewer is the one that's based upon population densities more than anything else. And so that would be one case where we might want to consider changing the units within a sanitary sewer requirement, saying, hey, like the mayor suggested, we have 10,000 square foot. Maybe we actually should be looking at 10 people within these units. whatever the case may be, whatever we feel is the right number, that could be increased for sure.
Good. Councillor Cryer, I can't see, just didn't want to exclude you. Do you have any comments or?
Thanks, Mayor McEwen. I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
then we've got the resolution, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor, as amended, because there is going to be a slight amendment on that Councillor Webber brought up. So,
Sorry, excuse me, Mayor McEwen, if I can just chime in. We do need to have that amendment specified as to what exactly the language is being amended prior to third reading. So council would not, if there is an amendment and we want to flesh that out this evening, that would be appropriate. But I would not recommend that council grant the 3 readings if there is language that's going to be amended.
let's then give it 2 readings. And then when it comes back for third and final reading, we'll have that all fleshed out then.
Sure. Sorry if I can interrupt one more time. That will have to be 2 separate meetings. We won't be able to give it third reading and adoption at the same meeting.
No problem. Perfect. Let's do that then. Okay, so I'll call the question. All those in favor for 2 readings as amended? Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Boyd. Very much appreciated. We'll now move on to the water rates and regulation amendment, hydrant use. Recommendation would read, Ms. Elrick.
Thank you. So this item was before council at the last meeting and essentially is updating the hydro use permit and ensuring that the village is compensated for hydrant and water use. So the recommendation would be that council adopt Anmore water rates and regulations bylaw, amendment bylaw 635/2020.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Open up for discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you. We'll now move on to 11A, new business, Canada, British Columbia Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. I guess this would be Miss Halliwell.
Yes, thank you, Mayor McEwen. As has been the theme in some of our more recent discussions, there's another grant opportunity that's come out with the federal and provincial government trying to sort of stimulate the economy as much as possible. There's been a number of different grant programs that have become available. This is a new funding stream within the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, which is the same overarching granting program that we applied for the Anmore Community Hub. This one is a COVID resilience fund, and the focus of this particular grant includes active transportation projects. It is again 100% funded, similar to the recent Spirit Park grant that we applied for, and those costs are shared between the federal and the provincial government at 100% of the costs. The requirements of this project are that it is started by September of 2021 and completed by the end of 2021. So it's got a very tight turnaround in terms of having to be completed. So the project that we felt as staff would be a good fit, given the the fact that the grant itself would covers active transportation, which includes footbridges, but also because it is 100% funded, would be a bridge crossing over Mossam Creek. So this has been a project that has been discussed by council as well as the Parks and Rec Committee for some time now. And as we do have Mr. Boyd on the line as well, we thought we could have a discussion about that crossing and applying for this grant to get that project done next year. So I'll open it up for questions. I'm happy to read out the recommendation first, or we can have some discussion ahead of that.
Yeah, let's get the recommendation on, and then I know that Mr. Boyd and Councillor Trowbridge have been in discussions of this, so it'll be good. So let's get the recommendation on first.
Great. So the recommendation is that council directs staff to apply to the Canada, British Columbia Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Grant, COVID-19 Resilience Infrastructure Stream for the construction of a bridge over Mossam Creek for a total project cost not to exceed $1 million. and confirm the village's willingness to provide overall grant management should the application be successful, and that council directs staff to seek endorsement and a letter of support from both the City of Port Moody and Metro Vancouver Regional District.
Is someone to move that? Moved, seconded. I'll open up for discussion. Councillor Trowbridge, do you want to talk about this exciting opportunity?
Yeah, I would. I have a quick question first. What is the Port Moody endorsement for?
I think really it's just to provide some sort of bolstering for our application that our neighboring communities would support the project.
Okay.
There has also been some discussion with Port Moody staff about the location of the bridge, which I think may be why Mr. Boyd has his hand up, and he can certainly provide some more information around that.
Yeah, so this comes down to the regional network as well that Metro Vancouver are trying to put together. And as part of the regional network, obviously that crosses borders between Port Moody and ourselves. And one of the, not issues, but one of the struggles is to connect in our municipalities is that really there's the roadways which connect us already aren't exactly the nicest walking sections. So therefore we're trying to generate a corridor which would create a nice connection between our municipalities and provide a regional connection basically, which is in accordance with Metro Vancouver. So hence the endorsement to get them to say, you know what, we would build a trail up to this section as well, in the future, which will connect to your section. So it'll be a cohesive link to link our municipalities together.
Okay, that makes sense. There is actually already a trail if you continue south on the pipeline. There's already a trail that does go into Port Moody. So that, I assume that was kind of the context, but yeah, this has been something we've been talking about literally for years, and I was starting to lose hope because of the scale and cost of the project. Certainly not something we could fund ourselves. There's no question about that. But when Chris and I spent some time on the property, it turns out that ISL did the engineering work and for the Sea to Sky suspension bridge, and we envisioned a suspension bridge across. I think it's about 160-meter gap. Chris, you could correct my memory. Yeah, and the valley is absolutely stunning. It would be a tremendous feature for the village, and it's a reasonably short walk from the school, elementary school. It's a reasonably short walk from the existing Atco trailers, but soon to be hopefully Village Hub. We thought it would be an extraordinary feature and enhancement to our village center, so to speak, and also make a more formal, vital connection north and south to our whole trail network. If it's too long to go into now, but that's a critical connection to what Chris has been helping the Parks Committee with in terms of joining all of our trails, and the north and south connection across Mossam Creek because of the depth of the ravine has been a real challenge. And there is a bridge there now. It's a questionable safety, and it's actually sitting on my land. So there's an issue around liability and all that kind of stuff. So this addresses that, but it's really not about that. It's about having a spectacular feature and a transit opportunity for everyone. Chris, if you want to talk more about the parts that you understand that I don't, just do that.
Yeah, so walking the land, as Councillor Trowbridge kind of just discussed there, it is a small suspension bridge there, Ped Bridge. It would, be a statement bridge as well, and it would provide a great connection. And only that, I think it generates the buzz as well for the village. It would perhaps, if there was more development down the hill, it would be a great place to help with commercial aspects as well. And to me, when I read the funding source, this hit so many of the points that they're trying to do. I kind of see it as a win-win for everyone on this application. So to me, it seems like a great application to be made, I suppose, Anson.
Councillor Weber.
Yeah, I was going to say some of the same things. I've felt that that was an important connection to Port Moody ever since I've lived up here. I remember a bunch of neighbors back in the old days. We went in there and cleared those trails and went in behind Strong Road and worked on some of the trails that were already being developed in Port Moody before they were formally adopted. But it's interesting, since the David Avenue connector to Anmore was killed, which would have provided a really good grade for walking and biking. That's actually still there and available to us as a route for walking and biking. As I think as we evolve as a society and become less car dependent, more transit dependent, and I think with e-bikes, it's actually becoming quite an important route into Anmore that avoids the roads. I mean, if you look at the roads that come into Anmore, none of them are straight into Anmore. You got to go around on both of them, and it's quite a mess coming up, the east side. So this would be a really great connection, and I think it would be well used. My boys used to use it walking to school when they went to high school there. So no, I think that needs to be put in the application, and that's always been the Achilles heel, that ravine, and not to mention the environmental concerns. Before the bridge was there, we had some pipes that went over, and it was a little rough on the creek. So I think there's a whole bunch of good reasons to do this project.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate a lot that's been said. I know that I believe the connection between Anmore Elementary School and Eagle Mountain Middle School, it would be quicker to go there than it would be, or to bike that distance with a bridge than it would be to drive going along East Road and up Sunnyside. So it would really connect this village, and there is a lot of buzz about what we could do there. And just to remind people, this is a high pressure gas line that Fortis is actually in the process of decommissioning because they don't need it anymore for Burrard Thermal. So, and we have met with them previously, and they have been very supportive of us, doing some trail infrastructure work along that right away and that. So anyway, I really think that this is a great opportunity, and if we could get even some part of this, it would be amazing. And I know the Parks Committee would certainly be very supportive, because it seems like when I was chair of the Parks Committee, probably 10, 12 years ago, it was a topic of conversation. So it'd be nice for Councillor Trowbridge to be able to get this win and to really start developing it, and with the knowledge that Mr. Boyd has in his company in regards to doing this sort of thing. How fortunate we all are. So anyway, I don't see any other comments, so I'll call the question. All those in favor to applying for this amazing grant? Opposed? Passes unanimously with 2 hands up from our Parks Chair. Good, we'll move on then to the Tri-Cities Food Council. A request from Councillor Amy Lubick, City of Port Moody, dated November 20th, 2020, regarding Tri-City Food Council for Council's consideration of endorsement of Anmore's participation and appointment of council representative. Ms. Elrick, do you want to talk about this?
Thank you. So essentially, as you said, Mayor McEwen, this is just a request that has come through from Councillor Lubick in Port Moody that has gone to all the Tri-Cities and Belcarra and Anmore, and just asking whether Anmore would like to consider participating and appointing a council representative to this Tri-City Food Council.
Good, thank you. Councillor Cryer.
Yeah, I'd like to speak to this. I brought it forward through Councillor Lubick, and this is really just a formality. We have already supported the food security table, the Tri-City Food Council, which it's now called. I don't know if you recall, 6 or 8 months ago, we passed a motion to do a grant with our neighboring communities, and it has been approved. That was $25,000 grant that through UBCM, a poverty reduction grant to figure out our food security gaps. And now, obviously, through the pandemic, food security is a lot more prevalent. And I wanted to just make sure you know that I will continue to be the representative, and also no staff time should be required on this. But I do think it's definitely worthwhile of our support. There's a lot going on. They have already been recognized by SFU as an organization that is on the leading edge of bringing groups together so as to prevent redundancies and to work on collaborating for the help of our community members who are struggling with food sources. So I give it my full support and just wanted to comment a bit.
And you would, it sounds like you would be certainly supportive of being our council's representative.
Yes, sorry, I didn't say that, but yes, I will continue to be the representative from our community.
Good. Well, thank you. I think all of council thanks you for doing that and keeping up with the good work that you're doing in the community. Is there a resolution that we have, Ms. Ulrich, or no?
Sure, if council wishes, then council could endorse Anmore's participation in the Tri-City Food Council and appoint Councillor Cryer as council representative for Anmore.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you again, Councillor.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, parking strategy follow-up. A verbal report is provided by Ms. Halliwell, our CAO.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. So this is some information that's coming back, and I'm seeking some further direction from council in relation to parking strategy. We obviously faced some struggles this year. I think that there were certainly exacerbated by the pandemic and people's need to be outdoors. In any event, one of the specific items that council was looking for was for the potential of a resident sticker program to come forward. Through the research that has been done by staff, you know, there's going to be a cost associated with this type of program, some upfront costs in putting bylaws in place and installing signage, which could be upwards of about $10,000. And in addition, we're expecting to have at least a part-time position dedicated to tracking the stickers and also providing some support for tickets and follow-up as well once the program is in place. And I've determined this information through discussion with the CAO at the Village of Belcarra. They implemented a similar program now where their entire community is resident sticker parking only. And so she's provided me with some of the impacts that it's had in terms of cost and resources. So if council is supportive of a resident sticker program and resident only parking within the village, I would just ask that you provide some direction for me to include that within the 2021 budget considerations that would come forward in the new year, you know, with the intent of putting that program into place ahead of the 2021 summer season.
Okay, I will, you know, I think this is something that we have promised a lot of the residents, especially in the summer. And I can tell you with the lake traffic, and I certainly don't see it decreasing anything at any point. It's important when you're setting up roadblocks and preventing people coming into the north end of the village, that people are identified with their, you know, decals on their vehicles, because otherwise it's really tough for the RCMP and the traffic control people to monitor. You know, it is a lot of money that we're talking about, though, and I don't know how regulated we need this to be. You know, is this something that we just simply get decals made and we issue so many per household? You know, with a little bit of a, you know, I don't necessarily think that we need to you know, track them in that. If a vehicle has a decal on it, and most times of the year, it's just saying that it is a vehicle. I think most houses would only need 2 or 3 decals, because that's probably at the very most the amount of vehicles that would be parked on the road. So I don't know. I'm wondering if there's a bit of a hybrid in regards to that, but I do think people are asking for this, and I think it is important. You know, this was in place many years ago here in Anmore, and you know, now that we're having this influx of people outside of our municipality coming in and wanting to park here, I think it's prudent that we formulate something. But I'm looking forward to hearing some comments from council. So I see Councillor Weber. I can't hear you. Turn your mic on, please.
I don't know if we need to change any signage. I mean, if we have it within the village that you have a resident sticker and the stickers could be tracked with numbers and a big Excel spreadsheet, we're not that big. I don't know if we need to change any signage. And first of all, Councillor Trowbridge would need about 25 stickers, just to note. So we would have a few. But we did this before years ago, and it was never a problem. It was just that the village handed out stickers. I don't even think they tracked who they went to. Now, maybe we needed a little bit more formal than that now, but I think the big cost is changing the signage to, from no parking to resident parking. But I just wonder if that's really necessary.
If I could just speak to the signs. Sorry, the sign, they wouldn't be to replace all the no parking. It would just be the addition of a badge underneath that would say resident only. And I would recommend that if we don't have that signage up, then, and we're ticketing people and they point to the sign to say, well, it doesn't say resident sticker only. I'm not going to go onto your website to read your bylaw to say that the whole village is resident only parking. Then the enforcement isn't going to be effective.
But it would still say no parking.
Right now.
But residents would know that they can park by a no parking sign as long as they have a sticker. The people that are going to break the rules don't live here anyway. So
yeah, we can certainly have, if council is providing that direction, we can certainly have the discussion with our bylaw enforcement officer to get his input on what the requirements would be in terms of signage to ensure we could enforce.
Yeah, I think it's worth looking into. I mean, we've always, we're a small village. We don't have a lot of money. We've always found creative ways to do things. So I just think it needs looking into.
And to your point, Councillor Wevering, sorry, it's been a long day. Like an owner or a car collector, as Councillor Trowbridge is, those vehicles would never be parked out on the street anyway, so he wouldn't need decals on them per se.
He's giving them a rough time.
Oh, were you just giving a hard time? Okay. But, it's mainly for people that would have like a nanny or something like that comes over that is occasionally going to be parking out on the street, or, a sibling or something like that comes over to visit that isn't, there's some challenging areas to park in Ravenswood because the driveways are so small in that. And we do actually have an area for, resident parking on the side. The signs actually say it right now. So I don't think this needs to be as complicated as what we're sort of conveying it to be in that. I think that it could be a little bit more, each household, and we register how many decals they have. We get a decal made up. People come to the village hall, they pay a fee for picking up the 3 decals or a deposit or whatever in that. So, when they don't need them, they bring them back and they get $10 or whatever it is back in that. So like I said, I think this could be quite well. And I think the residents have asked for this. So I'll ask Councillor Cryer.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor McEwen. Yeah, I think we definitely have to do something. There's been talk about it. We've tried a lot of different things, and this is what our community is asking for. And I agree, it doesn't have to be that complicated. People aren't supposed to be parking on the street. They know that there are no parking signs. Most of our residents are not parking on the street anyway. So as far as redoing the signage, that is a huge expense that I don't see that we would have to undertake. So I would like to discuss it further, maybe come up with some type of a hybrid, like Councillor Wevering said. I think we can come up with something.
Good.
And a lot of it too was, I think, when we were doing traffic control, say on East and Sunnyside, if you have the decal that you live here, it just makes it easier coming and going on those busy holiday or sunny afternoons. Now it's during the week as well.
Mm-hmm. Good. Any other comments? Okay. Ms. Hathaway, there's no recommendation here, just sort of
yeah, no formal decisions are being requested, just that I will bring it forward as part of the 2021 budget deliberations.
Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll move on to 11D, which is the status update on the regular council meeting resolutions. And the recommendation, Ms. Albrecht?
Thank you. The recommendation is that council receive the status update of regular council meeting resolutions for the period July 2020 to date for information.
Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. Any discussion? See none. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Okay. We'll move on to the mayor's report. I just wanted to let everybody know the latest edition of the Anmore Advisor is out. Gives a lot of updates on some of the projects that we've got going on in the village. Also, some of the latest news regarding Anmore Green Estates. Community Hub has some links in there, so really good. And then some public safety things about winter road safety. So please, if you didn't get one, I know that we have a stack of them at the Village Hall. Also wanted to let people know that we have our quarterly ombudsman report. No issues in Anmore, no reports. So another good news piece of story. We've got a lot of concern over the last week regarding the bear incident. I just want everybody to know that council takes this extremely seriously, and we are doing everything that we can do. We will be hosting in the spring another Bear Aware meeting as we did last summer. We are trying to do the best that we can on educating the residents here in regards to how to live with bears. I do want to note, though, that we live with other animals as well. Tonight there was reports of a cougar that was roaming around East Road as well. You know, sometimes, unfortunately, bears do get put down. We also have a problem here as well with deer getting hit and getting put down. You know, unfortunately, we have to pay a company that comes and takes up the deer carcasses. So we need to also focus on all the animals in the village. We are living in a very, you know, amazing spot in the world that has an interaction with wildlife. And, you know, the bears are getting hit from people driving too fast down East Road. So it's something that we all have to be concerned about. I will tell you this, that council will be looking at, you know, if there is going to be continued disregard regarding our recycling program and our garbage program, that we will be addressing the fines. We were hoping to do the first step, which was education and alerting people to it. We've given out a lot of warnings. We put a lot of resources to this, having our public works and our bylaw people touring around on Thursday nights, making sure that people were informed and aware. A lot of people weren't aware and were doing it very naively, that, you know, they were putting out their cardboard, not realizing that it might have, you know, scents of food on it or pizza boxes and stuff like that. So we have had a lot of people that have really looked into this and are trying to do their best. And there are some people that are disregarding it. And I know we received an email today about a construction site, and I was immediately on the phone with our building inspector and bylaw, and he went over there immediately to address it. So please keep us informed. We're going to do everything that we can. We want to live amongst the bears and all the wildlife within the village. And when it comes to, you know, the conservation people, they are the experts in this field, and I will always rely on their expertise in regards to how to deal with some of these situations. For another point that I wanted to say is that if you're out social distancing and going for a walk in the evening when the rain isn't around, please come by and have a look at our Spirit Park. We lit up Spirit Park again this year to show that Christmas is still going on in a safe manner. But please respect social distancing. And I just wanted to say an extremely big thank you to the fantastic job that the Public Works Department did putting this together. It really is amazing. I've heard a lot of feedback in regards to it and how great it looks and how it's really becoming something that represents the village. And other than that, I just wanted to say to everybody, stay safe. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. And then I guess we won't see you again till next year. So I'll now pass it off to council's comments. Councillor Cryer.
Thank you, Mayor McEwen. I am a broken record in saying that I want to once again say thank you to the community for all of the donations. I still have some in the garage. I'm on my 4th load, and 5th and 6th will be this week. I still am waiting for more, and the organizations are so grateful. I want to also do a special shout out to Stuart and Lance, who came over and took a load to 3030 Gordon last week. I think they were a little bit surprised at how much. They had to switch vehicles so they could get everything in. So that was a good problem to have. But once again, thank you. thank you. It's been very overwhelming. And also, again, a thank you to Georgia Lyons for Candy Cane Lane. We are terribly disappointed that we were not able to to support as we normally would because of the pandemic and the public health orders. But she persevered and she did a great job. And I know that she's been getting a lot of good response, and Eagle Ridge Hospital Foundation is very pleased, and Ravenswood looks beautiful. And we are definitely looking forward to building upon that next year when things are a little bit back to normal and we can support that as a village. So thanks again to everyone. And echoing what Mayor McEwen said, I hope everyone has a very safe, albeit quiet, likely Christmas. And we look forward to 2021.
Okay, thank you. Any other council reports? Councilor Weber.
Yeah, just to echo what you said, Mayor McEwen, on the bears. I mean, this comes up in the Environment Committee meetings quite regularly, what to do about the bears and to keep moving forward. You know, the education program was quite successful in the summer. I think we did have a lot of reduction in infractions, but I think, you know, without the fining, without being constantly on people, it's going to fall by the wayside. Some people get it, some people don't. I think it is probably time to start looking at fines and maybe significant fines. And I think, you know, it's interesting. This latest bear incident is a bear going into a garage. So you start to think, well, maybe there's not enough garbage cans anymore, and they're not easy pickings like they used to be. So bears follow their noses. They're going to find whatever smells they can, and they're going to go for it if they can find a weakness, whether it's a door, a window, an unsecured garbage can. So it's a very complicated problem. I think we have to continue with the education program constantly, which I think the village has done a good job, but we may have to start backing it up with some significant fines if we don't see a change in behavior. You know, we gotta save our wildlife. This is why we all moved up here. So we gotta be doing everything we can. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Laidler.
You're muted, Councillor Laidler.
Hi, that better?
That's better.
So we had our first meeting of the safety committee on the 9th of December in the evening. There was 4 people that made up the committee. There was some discussions regarding getting information out on time, regarding any problems in the city. We looked at the you know, break-ins and theft from auto. They're not many, but obviously we should look at how we're going to get that information out. There was one suggestion regarding speed watch, which the RCMP support, but it's in Port Moody, and there was suggestions that we develop a speed watch program in Anmore. We're going to develop that a bit more with the RCMP and see what they say. We also had in attendance the block watch people. They've got about 9 captains right now in Anmore. They could do with more, and they are going to be in a regular attendance at the safety committee to try and develop how we're going to implement block watch in terms of expanding it. And we set a schedule on the second Wednesday of each month. The next meeting is on the 13th of January. That's it.
Good. Thank you very much, and thank you for taking that on. Councillor Trowbridge.
Yeah, just 2 things very quickly. Just on the bears, because it's top of mind. We've done a good job of starting to policing cans that are out too early. But again, Julie, I don't know if it's still happening, but I'll remind again that I'm still seeing some that are left out all weekend. So like Councillor Wivering mentioned about cardboard, or John mentioned about cardboard, I'm not sure. You know, if the odor's there, it's still a problem. So I want to make sure they're looking for containers that are left too long, not just put out too early. And aside from that, I just want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas.
Good. Well, thank you all. We'll now move it on to the Chief Administrator Officer's report. Ms. Halliwell.
Thank you very much. Yes. So maybe just on the same theme of the bears, I did request an update from the conservation officer who has placed the 2 traps in our community. He's advised that some conservation officers will be up in Anmore tomorrow, sort of patrolling for attractants that are left. That building site would probably be a good example. So glad to hear that that's already been taken care of. He has also indicated that there have been members of the public tampering with the bear traps. And so while they are up in the village tomorrow, if they do witness any contraventions of the Wildlife Act, which would include leaving attractants out or tampering with any of their equipment, then they will be looking to issue fines. So that was the update that I got from them today. I also wanted to just mention that the Village Hall closure has been extended through to the extent of the public health officer's restrictions on January the 8th, and we'll continue to monitor that going forward. Appointments can still be made if people do need service in person at the Village Hall, and they can be emailed to village.hall@anmore.com. And finally, I just want to say thank you to Council for an incredibly supportive year in 2020. Certainly, it was a challenging one, and we faced a number of challenges that we haven't seen before. I think this is a great sort of end to 2020 being on an electronic council meeting, which we were able to put into place, and everybody supported very quickly when everything got shut down earlier in the spring. So just wanted to say thank you for all of your support this year, and also extend that thank you to all of the staff at the Village Hall who remained completely dedicated to providing service to our residents even in such uncertain times. So happy holidays to everybody, and like Councillor Creer said, very much looking forward to a brighter 2021.
Good. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And again, we're so fortunate to have such an amazing staff. It has been a troubling year, but I'll tell you, we certainly have a lot to look forward to next year in regards to the commencement of the construction of the Village Hub and moving some things forward. So I've got a few information items. Committees, minutes of the Environment Committee held on July 16th, 2020, minutes of the Community Engagement, Culture and Inclusion Committee held on October 8th, 2020, and the minutes of the public hearing held on December 1st, 2020. We've also received some general correspondence, Metro Vancouver Board and Brief for meetings held on October 30th, and Metro Vancouver Board and Brief meeting held on November 27th. We also have the Ombudsman Quarterly Report, July 1st to September 30th, which I referenced earlier. I'll now open up to public question period. Public is permitted to ask questions of council regarding any item pertaining to village business. 2-minute time limit applies to speakers.
So I'll just remind everybody, members of the public who are in attendance at our Zoom meeting today, that you can either use the raise hand function, you've got the chat function ability as well, and failing either of those two, at this time you can simply unmute yourself, identify who you are, and ask your question.
I don't see any hand raising. Okay, and I'm going to
my hand raised, but I do have a question. Hi, John. It's Lisa Johnston. Sorry. Hi, Mayor John. Mayor McEwen. Much better.
Go ahead, please.
I actually just want to send a quick message to Councillor Laidler if I could be added to the block watch list going forward in January, please. You said that you needed to get some more leaders or tenders or whatever it was. Sorry, I came in late, but I am interested in participating.
That'd be
Great.
very welcome, Lisa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lisa, I would suggest just send Councillor Laidler an email and he'll get
Sure.
you on the list.
Sorry, if I could just, I could probably just provide you with some instruction, Ms. Johnson, on our website. We have contact information for Anmore's Block Watch coordinator. Her name is Sandy DeShateson. And if you reach out to her directly, she can get you all the information you need to sign up.
Perfect. I'll do that. Thank you.
You could even just sort of yell across the back of your fence because
I know. I was going to say that. On it. Thank you.
Anyway, okay, I don't see any other questions then. I'm going to move to adjourn. Someone to move that? Moved, seconded. All in favor? Good night, everybody. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and have a great New Year's. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Merry Christmas,
Bye.
everyone.